everyone, and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. My name is David Edgar, and as always, I am your host. And this week here on Heart and Hand, it is, of course, deep into the close season, but sort of before any of the exciting stuff really begins to shake out in terms of transfers. So we just thought we'd get together for a quick how's everything going type of podcast, just to keep our hands in the mix sort of thing on the flagship. And joining me to have a chat all things Rangers is first of all Ross Hutton.
How you doing, David? Good to be here.
You didn't think I was coming to you first there, did you?
No, honestly I didn't. I thought you were going to Stuart and then panicked to unmute myself there. But that's the kind of it's the close season, David.
It's a close season.
I need my pre-season back.
That's exactly it, right? That's why I thought it would be important to do this. And also joining as Ross revealed there is Stuart McCall. Hello, Stuart.
Hi guys, kind of missold me. I thought we were doing like a special on Ronald de Boer tonight, but you've wired me in now, so...
once I got you through the door, I knew that it would be too late to turn back. So, listen, that's we spoke a lot towards the end of the season about the season. 2 weeks later, Ross, how are your feelings about it now that you've had a wee bit of time to sort of clear your head and reflect on it?
They've not changed too much, and I know what you mean. I think distance and maybe not being in the heat of the moment can sometimes give you a clarity of thought, but where I stand now is exact same where I stood after the Scottish Cup final. I think in the main, Clement has come in and done a good job. He managed to get a lot out of a squad that was incredibly limited in terms of depth and incredibly limited in terms of quality, but when push came to shove at the tail end of the season, we saw those limitations in the squad, and maybe to a degree saw those limitations in the manager, some would argue as well. But I think he done more than enough over the course of the season to warrant the benefit of the doubt. Winning the League Cup's vital to that. It would have been unthinkable to go through another entire season without winning a trophy. So we've managed to knock that one off, at least. And he's in a summer now where we are rebuilding the squad again. With what funds, I think, remains to be seen. And as you mentioned correctly earlier on, we're really before the proper toing throwing of the transfer window now. Obviously, we've got the Euros coming up too. What impact that has on player trading throughout Europe, and that'll trickle down to us. That remains to be seen. But I'm enjoying...
It'll slow it down. That's...
Yeah.
I've kind of felt that our business would be in two tranches this summer, which will be pre and post Euro, just simply because of what you said. The players, obviously, who are there, they don't move during it, and that means that the money doesn't start. The transfer market is a trickle-down thing, when the clubs at the top start buying, and the clubs below them, and so forth. So it may slow things down. Also, a lot of people are physically there when you're maybe trying to get them into your, for medicals and stuff. So there may well be a bit of a delay during that.
Yeah, which is frustrating for us because obviously we want as many players through the door as quickly as possible in order to be able to settle a squad down before the start of the league and the Champions League qualifiers, obviously. So that's frustrating, but that's just something that we, like everybody else in Europe, are going to have to deal with. And like I said, I think the manager deserves the benefit of the doubt for last season. If we're all acknowledging, and I think in the main that we are, that the squad was poor, then I'm keen to give him that space and that time to go and build his own squad, because I cannot stomach the thought of being back where we were last October, this October coming. So I think next season we might need to be patient at points, particularly at the start, because we're not going to have that large period of time over the summer to get the players in and settled. We just need to see how that starts at the beginning of next season.
On that, Stuart, about the potential, because it ended in such disappointment, and there was quite a lot of criticism of the manager. I think the not entirely unfair rationale that I saw sort of put forward for it was, well, he got a lot of praise when it was going well, so he gets criticism when it goes badly, and that's par for the course, incidentally, with Rangers. But in terms of things that have been said, well, if Rangers make a slow start next season, then he could be getting fired. I'd be very surprised, very to the point of being stunned, if that was to happen. I think Rangers will back him if it's a slow start. The reason being simply that, one, they don't want to get caught in a pattern of hiring and firing. And secondly, because what you're again doing then is you bring somebody in October, and if they do well but fall short, you're right back in the same position. So I think he will see the year out regardless. I think that there is no plans for that. Secondly, I think there is a sense that it may take a wee while to put the team together. and the start may not be absolutely perfect, which is correct. Um, I just think that it's the potential if we do start a wee bit slowly, and that is an if, by the way. We could have all guns blazing to then sack a manager, and what we are basically saying is the manager who has to commit, who comes in, then pretty much has to win the league, right? Because otherwise we'll get to someone and be disappointed. So that, I think, they realise is not a sustainable model. So I can't see Philip Clement being in any bother other than a complete and utter debacle, which I think is unlikely. I don't think that would happen on his watch. So in terms then of what we're looking for at the start of next season, it'd be nice if it just arrived and clicked and everything was perfect. But the reality is that's probably not going to happen. I've argued, and I stick by it, that while you'll always have your reactive people that just scream and shout regardless, I think if fans can see signs of progress, then they'll stick with it. Now, by that, well, I mean they need to be reasonably quick signs of progress. I'm not silly. But if they can see a structure and they can see a methodology and they can see the tactics and they can see what it's supposed to be, then I think that the fans will get behind that. That's where I think Philippe Clement's challenge is. Not so much about instantly building a winning side, because I don't know if that's possible. But more importantly, putting together a side, that's where Bill fell down, because he was changing tactics, 3-4 times a game, changing the team every week. So you couldn't say, well, he knows what he's doing and we just need to tweak it. It was, this guy is absolutely flailing and he's chucking everything against the wall and hoping that something comes off. So he was clearly at his depth. I don't think Clement will do that. And I think that what we need instantly is, all right, this is where we're going with this squad.
Yeah, I think it would have been wonderful if Philip Clement came in October and we could just have a completely blank canvas and we go from there with a fresh start. But that wasn't the case, even though we got off to a good start and he, made us solid, put the foundations in. He had a lot of baggage, or the club had a lot of baggage, waiting for him. I think that thing, the manager changes in November, 3 years in a row, have caused a lot of the injuries. And I'm not just putting it down to that, but I think that the changing in training has been mentioned quite a fair bit, from 3 different coaches, all for different backgrounds, different experiences, and I think that has caught up in us. So that again is another reason why I don't think that Rangers will move on Clement at all. Nor do I think they should. It does put him in that difficult position though, and that's why I went back to when he came in and we were linked with him and Lampard and Kevin Muscat, and I said, it doesn't matter who it is, they're going to need to do something really special here with a squad that isn't good enough, because all that happens is that he carries those 4 defeats against Celtic into next season. There's no way around about that. We
No,
can't.
that's a fact.
We're not going to wipe it away, and I would love to, but it puts him under a hell of a lot of pressure, and I don't necessarily think that's his fault. I think he inherited poor running of the club at board level. I think he's inherited a poor team where some players are away, some players don't want to be there, some players can't cope with being there. It's just a mess. I am absolutely of the belief we need to stick with this guy the same way that we did Steven Gerrard, for example. I think we've seen through the first couple of years under him, there was a lot of frustration. There was a lot of disappointing results. We lost to Celtic, lost cup finals, etc. But we stuck with them, and we could see something developing. We could see something happening, and I think we would have that success if we stuck with Clement. But it's getting through that, and I think from his point of view, we need to see signs of progress. So, of course, the new transfer, Niels Coppin. So far, I've been encouraged by who we've been looking to bring in. I totally agree with you guys. I think it's not, ideally we get all the players in for the start of pre-season. I don't even think we'll get all the players in for the first game of the season.
We won't.
It's just it'll go to the end of August, we'll go into January. But what we need to see is, consistency in the team selection, consistency in results, and consistency, most importantly, I think, in performance and how we're going to play moving forward. So, look, he's got a lot on his plate, and I think he mentioned at the end of the season about the 4 qualifying games, and we're going to Parkhead, I assume, at the end of August, so it's going to come thick and fast. I expect it to be fitter. I expect it to be better, more structured and set up better. And then we've just kind of got to go in and hope that I don't think we can go in all feeling down and sort of like we've got to go in full energy and back the team, because I'll be honest, I can't face another let's get this manager out and let's bring a new and let's get a new start. I think it's just a cycle of disappointment that we're not going to resolve by doing that.
No, because what you're then effectively saying as a manager who comes in October or whenever, October, November, pretty much has to win the league, or we start off next season disappointed, because there's a reason if you're getting rid of a manager in October, it's because things are going really, really badly. And it's just too tall an order to do that. That doesn't mean he's not under that he's not under the microscope, because that goes with the territory. And
I do think he needs to get us into the Champions League, for example. Sorry for butting in, David. I think the fact that we're seeded, and I know it's not as easy as just to say get us into the Champions League, but I think that's massive. That's absolutely massive in terms of what he's going to do. Obviously, made an impact when he came in Europe last season, after the debacle in Limassol. It's quite remarkable that we did get through that group after that.
Very much so.
But the fact that we're seeded, I think we've got to be really looking from a lot of different reasons to get into that Champions League this season.
Aye, 100%. Sorry, David,
financially.
just to come in on that as well, I think Stuart's absolutely spot on, and he touched on a few of those initial hurdles there that we're going to face in the early part of next season. The first one being you're probably going to have quite a tough away game to start the season. We don't want to have a repeat of last year's debacle at Rugby Park where you're behind on the first game of the day. Then you have to qualify for the Champions League as well, and think of the boost that would give the entire club. Not just in the long term, which is the very obvious concern about not falling further behind Celtic in the financial stakes, but just in the short term, the boost it would give to us to be back in the Champions League. And for that new squad as well, that initial sense of achievement can propel you throughout the rest of the season. And then the third big hurdle you're going to have to clear early on in the season is obviously going to Parkhead too. That narrative that we spoke about after the Scottish Cup final, David, where Clement still hasn't beaten Celtic and he's now going into an uphill battle to try and stop that and arrest that narrative at Parkhead very early on with a new squad next season. You know what I mean? It's tough. I would be amazed if we managed to clear all of those hurdles. It's a big, big ask, but if we do, what a position we're going to be in going into that first international break in next season.
One thing I'll say is that if he did do his due diligence, which I assume he did, he's a pretty clever guy in taking this job. He must have known that there was a lot of changes needed, and that he was going to be getting into this season a fresh start and probably needing to qualify for the Champions League. So I think if you looked under the bonnet a wee bit, you would have seen the mess that we were in when he took over. So it can be a surprise to him. Maybe a surprise at the players and their performance levels and how bad they drop. But I don't think what he's facing right now in the job would be a surprise to him at all.
No, it's not. It's not. One thing that he'll be doing it with is a very different looking team, and there's going to be a lot of movement both in and out of Ibrox this season. Jefte's arrived in. Oscar Cortez is back. We have said goodbye to a number of well-kept faces. John Lundstrom is away, Borna Barisic, Ryan Jack, Kamar Roof, John McLaughlin are all gone. I think there'll be several other players from that squad will be on their way in the summer. I think it goes back to the question of culture. We've spoken a lot over the years on here, Ross, about leadership and about dressing room culture and whether or not it's a winning culture. Well, it isn't, right? Regardless. So I don't think it's arguable that you can say that. But I think that there is a sense of that there have been players who, regardless of whether you think of them as individuals or whether you think of them as leaders, any of that stuff, the fact is that we have been trying this with a core, not always the same players, but with a core of players, and it hasn't worked. And therefore, it's a bit unrealistic to go with the same core and expect it to be different, because all the evidence says it won't be. So I think that there is that realisation. And also, Stuart mentioned at the start about the type of players that have been linked with, the two who have come in, others that Rangers have been linked with. It's very clear Rangers want younger, hungrier, faster players. It's not just a change in terms of mentality that we require. But I think Rangers are looking at it and say, physically, we don't have the right tools to do the job. And that has been a big pet hate of mine when I've watched Rangers in big games. I'm talking, against the better European sides. I'm talking in the Old Firm matches. And I just think they're stronger than us and they're quicker than us. And, that's an incredibly difficult challenge to overcome. And I think that the fact that Rangers are looking to move to guys who have pace over and above things like, if they're younger and they've got sell on potential, all that kind of stuff. That's great. But I think there is a conscious move that physically we don't have the type of players required for the job that we need to do.
100% there is, and any rebuild with new players coming in en masse is going to be quite exciting, right? If you remember Gerrard's first summer, for example, big tranche of new players coming in, how exciting that was during that summer. Difference is now we're obviously sick of rebuilds because we've had to have them so often over the last few seasons. And if it was another season where we're going into signing the same profile of player, we would all be utterly despondent going to Ibrox next year. So I think the exciting thing from a fan's point of view is we do definitely feel as we're moving into a kind of new era and a new direction of the players that we're signing. With regards to the players that we've let go, you hit the nail on the head. There has been a culture of failure at Rangers. That's evident to anyone who's been watching us. Ryan Jack, for instance, he's given us moments. He gave us that moment in that first Old Firm win since we came back up against Celtic. He gave us that moment in the Scottish Cup final, but it was just moments. John Lundstrom was the same. He gave us a couple of good months in that run to Seville, gave us that eternal moment against Leipzig, but it was just that. It was moments. With regards to all of those players kind of widening out to those who have left, there's a problem that, and it's been there for years in the Rangers squad, hasn't it? That it's been a mile wide in team photos, but about an inch deep in quality. And that's what we need to move away from this summer as well. You can have all the players in there that you want. We've had big squads in the past. We've got a big wage bill to show for it as well. But as you saw at the tail end of last season, when a few of those first team players start to drop out, for example, when Sima was out, when Cortez was out, when Danilo was out, when Cantwell was out, you saw the drop in quality there. You can't perpetually lose first team players and expect to maintain the same standard. I appreciate that. But the drop in quality was so substantial, it did contribute to that fairly radical slide we had at the tail end of last season. So if we can fix that as a problem as well, if we can get a greater level of squad depth in there, then it will help us over the course of next season when we inevitably do sustain injuries, because they will happen as much as they are a real frustration for us. But we just need to make sure we're not in that position again where the players that we are then relying on and asking to do our job are just so below the required standard that we do have a massive slide again.
Yeah, I think, Stuart, that is always going to, the injury thing is something, and it leads us into the next, which is changes behind the scene now. There's nothing here, I think, that we're speculating on. The manager has said it time after time that he's not happy with the way that things are at the training centre, whether it be medical, whether it be in preparation, and that changes are going to take place in there as well. There's obviously going to be changes to the youth system as well. He spoke about that. These are all things that are clearly have been, you mentioned him doing his due diligence, clearly since he came in the building he's been unhappy with. Obviously had to concentrate on other things, but now is the time he's been saying that it's going to get sorted, and hopefully it does get sorted.
Yeah, I think the idea that he would come in and it would all change in his first week and everything be turned around is fanciful. I think also when a new manager comes in, I think it's pretty clear you see the best of everybody, and everybody's putting on their best impressions or whatever. It's not until a wee while later when things maybe get a bit tougher, results turn a certain way, injuries take on board, and that he sees what's really. And I think that did happen around about March, April time. That he's seen why he was employed in the first place. I don't think that we have been utilising the facilities that we've got at the training centre. I don't think that those
Well, he
amount of
said that.
injuries. Yeah, I
He
don't
out
think,
and out said that there were literally there are facilities here that should be used as a matter of course that aren't.
which is, I mean, quite laughable
Staggering, yeah.
because we've probably got the best training centre in the country. I think we have, without a doubt, actually. So the fact that the players weren't using that, and we could tell they weren't fit, we could tell they weren't capable. And he spoke about having people who are robust and able to cope with playing 60 to 70 games a season. I think, footballers these days, I seen a stat the other day about the amount of minutes that Jude Bellingham's played, for example, at the same age as David Beckham did, and it's more than double. Footballers are playing more football these days than they did 20 odd years ago. You need to be able to cope with that, and I think he was really frustrated. You seen him having to manage a lot of players' minutes. And look, I'm probably come across. I'm a fan of the manager. I think I do like what I see from him. I think he's a good man manager. I think he knows what he's doing. And I do think he was, working with one hand tied behind his back. Of course, we spoke about the pressure earlier on, but the guy needs. I mean, we went into that cup final. Celtic had a fully fit squad. You seen the difference the subs they could bring on that day. And with all due respect, Clement had Scott Wright to bring on. I mean, and that it was just kind of highlighting what was there. There was just nothing really available to him. So um, I do expect him to change in terms of some staffing. Well, it's one of these things, but you don't really hear about it a lot. They don't come out and tell you, I've sacked him and I've sacked him and I've brought in these better new guys. It just kind of happens. But the proof will be there. The proof will be there come September, October, November time when we can see a consistent team on the park every week that's not constantly changing, because I think it did have a massive effect on us through the season in terms of not being able to build up relationships on the pitch, but not being able to build up the fluidity, consistency. The team was always changing, and of course you're going to have the injuries that just happen, like the freak injuries, like Danilo, for example, with his knee
Yeah.
injury. That was just unfortunate. But it's more the muscle strains. It's more they can only play 60 minutes this week, but it's just not good enough for us. So, and look, he's worked in football for a number of years. I think, as I said, he knows what he's doing, and I do believe that he will make the required changes. I think he's made that pretty clear to the board, and I think they'll have to act on that, whatever he needs to get. So yeah, like I'm positive about that, because from what I seen, how I was feeling last summer, which I wasn't excited at all, and I wouldn't say I'm excited now, but I'm a bit more optimistic than I was last summer. I think that's the best way to put it.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, I like the idea of bringing in young, exciting players who have got potential, because we haven't done it. We've had a squad that's kind of, for a couple of seasons, seems to have averaged at about, what, 28, 29, 30 as a playing age. And then
Yeah,
we wonder why we don't have anybody who's ready for a big sale. And that has to stop. And secondly, I think as well, you need to bring in guys whose best days are ahead of them, because we can't get people who are at their very peak due to finances. I think we realise that. So you're either signing up and comers who can get better, or you're signing guys on the downward slope who are going to get worse. And we've done that far too often over the past couple of seasons, then been surprised when they've started off okay and got worse. And it's like, well, nature is having its say in that one. Right, then, let's go through a few things then from last season. We'll hand out our awards, if you like, and our memories, both good and bad, from last season. Let's start with a nice, easy one then, because I think I know the answer to this before we even get started. Player of the season, Ross.
It's the easiest question you'll ever ask anyone on this show. It's Jack Butland, of course, and the fact there is no real debate about that is depressing and quite damning in and of itself, but take nothing away from how good he was over the course of the season. We were in the title race at one point. We would never have dreamt of being in one if it wasn't for Jack Butland, and I kept hearing throughout the season, Rangers' defensive record is very good and whatnot. It wasn't. Jack Butland was very, very good last season and thoroughly deserves all the praise that he gets.
I'm going to go for Butland as well. I think he was the only one who was consistent throughout the season. I do think that he had a wee bit of a dip towards the end of the season, but even so, was still good. And it was mainly because of the high standards that he'd set beforehand. But I just thought he had a terrific season, both in terms of his goalkeeping, but also his presence, what he brings to a defence as well. And I think that there were definitely times where he could ask a bit more from, well, a lot of times he could ask for a bit more than what he got. Stuart, which Jack Butland are you going for the Butland of the year?
the first 6 months, Jack Butland. No, look, I think he was fantastic for us. I don't think it can be understated. We spoke so often, David, about Rangers goalkeepers and how lucky we've been to follow Alan McGregor, who, of course, was on the way out, and but had been arguably our greatest keeper. To follow that and make it seamless. Obviously, he came, grasped the opportunity. I will say this: I spoke about relationships building and whatnot. He has not had a settled defence in front of
No,
him all
not at all.
season, and that's difficult for a goalkeeper because, as I said, you build relationships, but you build that understanding. So he's not had that whatsoever, and when it has been, players have been off of it, and they've not been on their best game. So I think if he's going to stay, which I'm very hopeful that he does, that we give him a settled defence to work with, because I think it'll make him better as well. And look, he's a quality goalkeeper. I think probably, I don't know if it's just coincidence, there was an element of maybe disappointment he never got called into the England squad. I think he probably did deserve it, looking at some of the, James Trafford, etc., who did get called in.
Yeah.
But he is top professional, top guy. We were fortunate enough, David, to meet him when you'd taken us into hospitality, and he's just an all round good person. So yeah, definitely Jack Butland. I don't think there's any. I wish it was somebody else. I wish we could pick somebody else rather than the goalkeeper, but here we are. So yeah, definitely him.
That's probably the telling thing. Next season, I want 3 or 4 contenders for a start,
Yes.
and I want them to be doing things, good things for us. Then I'll get us kicked off here, which is matches season. I'm going to go for Rangers 5, Hearts 0 in February. Not coincidentally, one of the only days where the manager did have most of the players available to him. And I thought Rangers that day were superb, played with a verve and a purpose. And I suppose it's that I'm sort of clinging on to going into next season. I just thought Rangers were great that day, scored some excellent goals against a good Hearts side who'd been playing really well as well. And it was just a really fun day. I enjoyed it. But I want again a number of those performances next season as opposed to one that stands out. And I mean not just about winning matches, but to do so playing well, with control, making chances, enjoying it. And that's something that I haven't been able to say for certainly the past 2 seasons. Ross?
I think for performance of the season, you're absolutely correct. For my match of the season, I'm going to go for the League Cup final and the 1-0 win over Aberdeen for what that day meant. League Cup being the Rangers Cup, we hadn't won it in so long. And as I said right at the top of the show, the thought of going through another season trophyless was just absolutely unthinkable. And for Clement as well, to be honest, if we're all looking back, to get that trophy under his belt, that first trophy, so quickly and in that fashion, it was absolutely necessary for him, and has bought a lot of the goodwill that sadly evaporated towards the tail end of the season. So the 1-0 Aberdeen League Cup win.
Sure.
That's because I was at that game with you, Ross, that cup
You had a
final. We
great time
sat
that
we did a great day that day. That was fantastic. It's difficult. I was racking my brain there, to be honest with you, in terms of highs. The 5-0 Hearts game, it was interesting, that game, because I actually thought Hearts didn't actually play that poorly that day. They actually knocked the ball about all right. Rangers were just clinical, and it's something we didn't do, unfortunately, near the end of the season. I really did think at that point that we were going to motor forward. We were looking really on it, and it was weird for us because Cortez and Diamande had come in and just hit the ground running, really, and that doesn't ever happen with Rangers a lot. So I'd probably go for the Hearts game. The Aberdeen one is vitally important, as I said, for the reasons Ross put ahead. His timing on that day, we didn't play great, but so it's not one of the memorable finals in terms of the overall performance, but we won. Outside of that, again, it's kind of similar to the Play of the Year, where you're kind of scratching the surface a wee bit. There's not a lot left.
No, and I think that does say a lot. I'd like to get back into the habit of Rangers having standard games at home against sides where you're winning 3-4-0, because that should be the norm, you know? And I know,
Yeah.
but they come and defend. Doesn't matter, right? You should have more than enough guile to break them down. There will be days, of course. Those are the days you get past 1-0 or 2-1 and you find a way to win. I understand that. But also, even away from home, I want to go and see season initiative in games a wee bit more than we do.
Yeah.
If there's one thing to take from this season into next, is start better. I'm not just talking about the start of the season, I'm talking about games, because Rangers so often took 20 minutes, half an hour, had to go a goal behind quite a lot before we kicked into gear. And that to me is something that's a mental issue that definitely needs addressed. Goal of the season, I'll start with you this time, Stuart.
I thought this was going to come up, so I tried to have a wee think. There's actually been a few decent goals this season. I think Matondo stands out against Celtic. I think that actually got voted goal of the season in
Yeah.
Scotland. But I'm actually going to go for a different one. Sema against Kilmarnock at Ibrox. At this in the turn of the year.
Yeah, that's
The
the end
ball
of
got
December.
chipped
No,
up to him,
3rd,
and
3rd of January.
3rd of
Sorry.
January, and he chested it in first time volley. I thought that was an outstanding goal, and that would turn out to be, I think, his last game before he got his injury, unfortunately. But yeah, for me, that one, of course, the Matondo one was outstanding the way it was in the game and whatnot. If that had turned out to be the winner of the game, then it probably would have got my vote. But I'm going to go for Seema just for the technique.
Ross?
I am going to go for the Matondo goal because as much as the end of the season was disappointing, that's a wonderful strike, and to do it in that moment under that pressure when we are chasing a goal against Celtic, it was fantastic. So rightfully goal of the season for me.
I'm going to go for a different one. A wee nod to a goal towards the end of the season, which was Tom Lawrence against Kilmarnock,
Yep.
which is a
Yeah,
lovely goal,
yeah.
just great technique. But I'm going to, because I like to take into account level of opposition and type of match and whatnot. So I'm going to give it to Cyril Dessers for his goal against Betis in Spain,
Oh yeah,
where
of course.
he turned into Lionel Messi for about 17 seconds, and it was just he'd been really bad in a Rangers shirt up to that point, and then he did that against a really good defence in a high pressure match, and that was just one of those goals that just got you out your seat going, but did I just see that? So I'm going to go for that. This category, we won't linger too long on it, but biggest disappointment, and that can be a player, a match, a goal, anything at all. Start with you, Ross.
Uh, thanks. Eh, the game at Dundee, the 0-0 by a distance, actually, because it's one thing to go and put in that absolute horror show up at Dingwall, but to follow it up in such an insipid manner was unforgivable. And that was the night, wasn't it, that all hope really ended in the league, left us. And I had hoped, and I don't know why I'd kid myself on, whatever, I had hoped to see something more from Rangers that night, but to just be served up that was gut wrenching. So, yeah, thanks.
Sure.
The first thing that popped in my head was Dundee. Again, I was there with Ross, and you were hoping for the reaction after the disappointment at the weekend. It
I
didn't
think
come.
that's why it's worse than Ross County, because Ross
Yeah.
County, you can get a freak bad performance, bad result, but they come out scared. Then the next
Mhm.
time you thought, nah, it's done, because
Yeah,
they
Dundee took
yeah.
the initiative that night, and we didn't react at all. And by the end of it, I think if you expected the team to score, I'd have probably put a fiver on
I
Dundee.
don't think they'd have shot on target.
No, and then I put, of course, look, the cup final, I think was just a snippet into the whole season in terms of how so much hope let down, and then the absolute kick in the guts right at the end was just how it went. And once the Seema goal was ruled out, I just kind of thought, yeah, I think I know how this is going to play out now. And I just an absolute horror show, to be honest with you, in the last 5 minutes of that match. And but look, Dundee for me was just the night that it just completely evaporated for going into the Ibrox game, 10 days before then, and also we had the whole issues about the pitch and the games called off and whatnot, and it was the most us thing to happen for us to go up there and basically lose the league at Dens Park. So
I'm going to go for injuries, and the reason is it just felt for a while like any time there was a player you enjoyed watching, you'd get the news flash in, he's out for X amount of weeks, and the one that really was Seema for me, who had been
yeah,
playing out his skin, goes to the Cup of Nations, doesn't play and gets injured, and you thought, oh, and it did just seem any time Ridvan towards the end of the season comes in and was playing well, and he gets injured and is out for weeks, and it just to me was it summed up the season to me that every time you kind of felt you were getting somewhere, you'd turn around and there was a locked door in front of you, and it just became such a slog. Although I can definitely agree with the Dundee game. Right, just to finish up then, lads. We are in the summer. It's nice and relaxed. Ross, I think you're actually going to the Euros.
Yep.
Stuart, you're very much not going to
Mhm.
the Euros. I think that it's fair to say that we have a good representation here of how Rangers supporters feel, both pro and anti, when it comes to international football. I think that I've managed to cover both the bases with you here today. But it's always fun to have a major tournament. We'll enjoy it. We'll get our energy back. And the great thing about football is it doesn't stop. You get a rest, and then you start to feel that itch. And you're for all that at the end of last season, you're like, I can't wait for the summer. Yeah, in a few weeks, it'll be can't wait for the football to get started. Obviously, success, and that means winning things. That means playing well. But what do you want to see from Rangers next season, Ross, that you haven't been?
a bit of verve and a bit of enjoyment when they're playing their football, because that will translate into the stands as well. The reason there's been such an attitude of misery within the support over the last couple of seasons, if we're being honest, is because the football's been crap. And even when we've been winning games, a lot of the time it's not looked convincing. There's a reason why we were waxing lyrical about that 5-0 Hearts result, because it was an
It
outlier.
stands out, yeah.
Yes, aye. So more of that next season if we can. I would take a 1-0 win every single game and every single season, of course. But we should be doing better than that. We should aspire to be doing better than that in Scotland. So playing with a bit of freedom, bit of verve, bit of enthusiasm, and hopefully these new, young, hungry players can come in and do that.
Stuart?
Just trophies. Look, as I said, I want to just see a competitive team who aren't. I felt as though we're going in with one hand tied behind our back, whether that's a manager that wasn't good enough, whether that's players injured, players not interested, players not good enough. I just want to see a team who are, together, who are aren't afraid of playing at Ibrox, aren't afraid of the support, and see just that sort of connection between the fans and the players, which we got back a wee bit when Clement came in. I think that'll help us a lot. So, and ultimately, I would just like to go back to just enjoying going to the games and not having that fear at the end of the season like you did when you feel like it's just done. Because I think in Scottish football, I don't think this is ever going to be a case of, Celtic are like Manchester City, where we can't ever catch them. I don't think they're miles ahead of us. They're ahead of us, but I think we can still get there if we're clever about our recruitment, the same way we were when Gerrard came in, and we take our time and get the right type of player in. So yeah, a lot, but ultimately, I think getting into the season, get into the Champions League, try and have a strong start, and if we can go to Parkhead with a bit of confidence and sort of set the tone for the season, then ideal. That's kind of what was the first aim of the season's got to be up until the first international break. Obviously, long way to go. As I said, I'm same as you, looking forward to the Euros, and Ross, I hope you enjoy it as much as you can. Outside the football, obviously, but yeah, no, I'm not joking. But yeah, we can enjoy the Euros, and then we can get back to the
Real
weekend
stuff.
up and down, feeling that we get all the time. So yeah,
Yeah, I think that for me is the main thing. It's if you like to borrow a phrase from history, freedom from fear. I want to see players who go out seeing every match as this is great. We're going to go out here. We're going to beat this mob. We're going to score some goals. Call it a swag or whatever you want to call it, but just guys who go out there confident in each other, confident in what they can do, and knowing that yeah, we're going to beat this lot today. We're going to beat this lot today because we've got better players than them. Not making everything look as though it's an uphill battle. And I think, as you both touched on there, I think that has been one of the reasons that the fans have struggled to get energy at times and struggled to get belief more than that because the players didn't evince it. And I'd like to see guys who don't look as though they've got the weight of the world on their shoulders playing for Rangers, because guys who have the weight of the world on their shoulders playing for Rangers are not suitable to play for Rangers. You have to enjoy it. You have to thrive off it because the pressure will not go away. Even when you win things, the pressure doesn't go away. So that's what I'm looking forward to, and hopefully something we will see next season. And then, folks, we'll be back later in the summer, obviously, but there's plenty of coverage for you over at Heart and Hand. We still have our shows over there. We have our regular shows, transfer rumours, news shows, current events shows, looking at player profiles, etc. We also have our historic shows when we go back and look at players, seasons, and matches from the past. And we have a Euros show where we will have coverage of everything that happens at the Euros as well. So we'll keep you in the loop on that. My thanks to our producers in London, Mike Lee and Paul Myers, and my thanks to my two guests today. First of all, Ross Hutton.
Thank you very much, David. I appreciate that.
And Stuart McCall.
thanks guys, thanks for the therapy session. That was much needed. So yeah, take care.
And we'll talk to you again in a couple of weeks. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.